part of my wonderful position in TSG is that I'm trying to prove it, and I think game design cannot be done without you constantly growing and evolving, because when you start growing in game industry, you start to become history.
Hello, my name is Artur, I'm from 10 Square Games, and welcome to Be Ahead of the Game, a series of interviews with people responsible for delivering our great games to the world. In today's episode, you'll learn that game designing doesn't have to be about creating tons of different levels for a game, and you'll see how passion can lead a person to having a perfect dream job. I don't want to be asking these questions when the interview is starting, but I just need to ask you for your name and surname and what you do in the company. Can you do that for the viewers?
Yes, I will certainly try. So my name is Marek Žilavý, and I'm something which we call in the 10 Square Games head of design, or the cross lead of design.
Okay, so two things, head of design and the cross lead.
It's always when I'm trying to introduce the role, it's a little bit specific, because head of design, it's different companies have different understanding of positions, and it's the definition or the meaning of the position in the 10 Square Games it's quite special, and it's head of design implies some form of manager position, but it's not. It's something, let's say, more beautiful, and it's basically a person which is responsible for the growth of all the designers in the company. So there's where the cross lead comes from, which means that basically, let's say, a leading figure which is not part of any concrete project or team, but tries to connect them.
All right. See, I love this kind of situations because I learn so much. You've explained everything to me, so I know the difference now.
Yes, that's what I do actually.
Yeah, brilliant. You, Mr. Marek Žilavý, am I pronouncing it?
Yeah, well, don't worry about it.
Okay, where do you come from?
I'm come from Slovakia, and don't worry about butchering my name. Always when I'm like trying to a foreign person try to explain or say my name, I just give it on the paper, so it's fine. I come from the wonderful country of Slovakia, and currently live in Bratislava.
Bratislava, okay. So geographically wise, we know that, we've covered that, but where do you come from in terms of your profession and what you do now?
Oh, I guess that's the more interesting part of the question. I studied and way back. I finished my university studies as a teacher.
You're a teacher, actually?
Yeah, I'm a teacher. So, like, doing the cross lead for design in TSG is for me some form of crossing or closing of a cycle.
Right.
I got into the gaming industry by a happy accident, which is a little bit scary for me, because I never thought that I want to make games, and I always loved games. Right. So what happened is that a few of my friends, they opened a studio, but it was like a web page design studio, but they made a strategy game, and they needed somebody who will give it like let's say identity and create a world in it. So
quite a task.
So what happened is that suddenly I came to a situation when I was going for work, trying to figure it out why orcs drive on wolves, and literally it blew my mind. And 15 years later...
Sounds funny when you put it this way, but it must have been really challenging for you.
It was just amazing. It was just amazing. It was challenge, but a different kind of challenge. I realized...
A good challenge. Yeah.
Yes, I realized how does it feel when you actually work on your dream job. So and 15 years later, I still I'm blessed to being able to say that I still have my dream job, and it still blows my mind. So.
Excellent. 15 years, you're saying?
Yes.
It's quite a long time.
Yes, it's funny because I always said like it's 10 years, but when I started the TSG interview process, I was like, wait, how many years? So I counted years, like, wait, it's 15. All right.
Yeah, time flies, doesn't it? Especially when you do something you love. Do you remember those ancient days of having the very first PCs or any platforms for games to be played on. Do you remember your first game you've played and maybe liked it? It doesn't have to be the first game. Any game that just it's close to your heart and you love it.
I actually do, and it's funny story. I rediscovered the game when I was like doing a presentation on some specific topic, and it was Space Invaders. And there are like two facts, funny like facts about Space Invaders. That I played it on an ancient computer in my mom's work, and then it was like just a magical moment when I really I cannot describe it other than like a magical moment when I discovered that I control the stuff on the screen and it moves, and then I'm just having a blast.
You're in control, yeah.
Yes, I always liked cartoons.
Right.
And this was for me like the next mind-blowing thing. So, it was
Space Invaders. Was it the one you shoot the alien spaceship?
And now we were getting to the fun part of the story. So part of my wonderful work on TSG is doing interviews with game designers, and I was using Space Invaders as a reference game in my questions. Oh my. And some of the candidates, they're a little bit younger. Yeah. So they try to answer the question, and I see like, oh my God, they don't know what Space Invaders. And then I realized I'm getting old.
Well, we're on the same boat, so don't worry about that.
Yes. So then I started to use less obscure like reference, but Space Invaders still is for me a quintessential example of like a game.
Speaking about games, obviously we will speak about games all the time today, and designing games, obviously. One of the games that is, the best one ever for you.
I have a clear answer for that, and I even call it my game fatale. And it's I really love Souls games, and Bloodborne is basically I see games as games, the rest of the games, and then there's Bloodborne. The game just touched me in so many levels, not only from gameplay point of view, but the whole like. I don't know how to say it other than the spirit of the game. So it's I'm not sure what I want more, if there is another Bloodborne or if this is enough. And
so this for you is the ultimate version of a game that applies to all of it. It ticks all the boxes.
Yes, I was really surprised how deeply the game touched me.
Okay.
It's a fascinating example how games can influence your life.
That's what I was going to ask you about, to be honest. How do they, the games, what sort of a role do they play in your lives?
Well, I'm a game designer, so I see there's a huge potential in a huge untapped potential in basically like a game experience or gamifying experience or interactive experience itself, not only in the meaning of like, let's say, show business, but also I see immense potential in education, even like therapy or something.
Excellent. That's a nice area you touched on.
So I have a personal dream. When I will be, I guess, retired, I will start to do what I call like healing games, which there's an ambition that games can actually help you.
They can be therapeutic.
And it's already happening, only if you get like a room to escape your daily routine. We have seen it in the latest pandemic, which I guess it's a historical fact now, that people were really thankful for games because it gave them the room to escape.
Some place to go and forget about what the surroundings bring.
Which is sometimes really awesome to have, and it's completely fine to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's a very interesting point of view, to be honest. But obviously we've got different types and kinds of games. So how do you cope with them? Because there's masses of them, and obviously you need to know the games to be good game designer. Am I right?
A lot of the time, especially when we are speaking about mobile games, I have even formulated yesterday a hypothesis about that, but it's a little bit like a different topic. It's about professional curiosity, because it's like when we are speaking about the mobile market, it's super competitive. It's the most competitive part of the game market, or like, let's say, game industry. Well, I dare say so,
Yeah.
and I dare anybody to challenge me.
Okay, I won't.
When you want to be a good mobile free-to-play game or mobile designer, you just play everything, because you need to have really good understanding of the mobile market. And then this is where, as I said, professional curiosity kicks in, and you need to know your references and so on. So you realize you're playing the games which you are definitely not the target audience of, but you don't mind it, because you're very curious how they deal with the monetization, how they deal with the retention mechanics, how they deal with any kind of fun factors present in the game. And then what happens, that you find out that you're getting hooked on some of the games, and
That's what I was going to ask.
then you find your own pleasure. So it's like it switches from the you play as a game designer to you play as a player.
As a player.
But when this happens, even the game designer is like, oh, interesting. Why do I like this actually?
There you go. So it does give you this sort of a spur that makes you think, okay, hold on, I started liking it, so maybe there's something I could take from it, or some sort of inspiration.
I spoke with several musicians about music, and it was always fascinating for me how they cannot distinct them as musicians from them as just the audience when listening to the music, and they're already like, oh wow, this guitar solo, it was like so well executed. So this happens also to you as a game designer, I would say. So you still allow yourself to let go and have fun as a player, but then you have these aha moments when you realize, like, wow, you make mental notes, so to speak.
So if you say if you put it this way, to me, it's like you constantly switched on.
Yes, because
you need to be.
Yeah, I guess it comes with the territory of loving your work.
Yeah.
So
well, speaking of which, your work, obviously, you must love it. So, and you've been doing that for 15 years now, you
yes.
said. Is it like, obviously, we've got ups and downs, and better and worse days. But what would be the thing that pushes you forward?
I personally think that, and I'm part of my wonderful position in TSG is that I'm trying to prove it, and I think game design cannot be done without you constantly growing and evolving, because when you start growing in game industry, you start to become history. So it's like you start losing touch with the market, with the technology, with the current know-how, and this is really what engages me. When you love something, you care for it, and you want to nourish it, and you want to continue growing it. So it kind of
beautifully said.
I know.
really well put.
Yes.
So why TSG? Is it because of the constant growth?
There are two big reasons. One is that I in my evolution as a game designer, I realized that I more and more enjoy basically helping others to grow. There's definitely huge satisfaction from like making stuff and finishing stuff and making games themselves. It's always fun. Right. But I more and more realize that I really like to help people to grow, and I found more satisfaction in this than in actually making the games themselves. It was a surprising fact for me. But then TSG came with this offer of basically saying like, hey, your job will be helping all the designers in TSG to grow. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
You've just ticked my biggest box.
Yes. So it kind of formulated literally the thoughts in my head, which I was just like playing with, and I imagined myself in this position, and then I realized that I almost need this. So this was the first, basically the first reason, And as I told you, to some extent, it's a closing of a cycle with my like teacher studies and so on. So
Another beautiful phrase. You've just closed the circle again.
yes, yes.
Excellent.
I think working with people and even like growing other people and helping them to grow is an important part of game design. And everything what we do, including communication with players through the games which we do. So it's a natural part. But some of the game designers like it more than others. So I guess you need to be a specific type.
Okay.
So that was the first reason, like realizing I really, really love others to grow. And the second part was that during my first very intensive and not so successful contact with mobile free-to-play, I fell in love with validation and how like mobile free-to-play game design or free-to-play game design uses different sources of validation to actually find out if you are if you are right as a game designer.
Okay.
A lot of other areas of game design miss this kind of step of validation.
Which seems to be very important.
If you want to grow as
Yeah.
a game designer, because like it's actually, it doesn't sound like a bad idea to know if you were right, if you want
Well, to me, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
If I do
if you
something,
want
I
to
want to make
repeat-
sure that it's done perfectly. Yeah.
If you want to repeat your success, that's basically for me the difference between artistic expression and some form of like a systematic approach to success or like even, I would say, even science. So
Wow.
that's the second reason. Like I really love like validation, design validation.
Good, strong reasons.
Yeah, I know.
Excellent. What would you say is the design culture in TSG, the whole design culture?
That's the fascinating part about the current situation. We have a strong, let's say, tradition in TSG, and TSG managed to achieve immense success, which I respect deeply. But at the same time, it has gone through a process of massive scale up, including like basically getting a lot of know-how and way of doing things from outside of the company. And the current situation is about like getting the best from both worlds. And this is another super exciting part of my current job. Is part of my mandate is actually help to nourish this design tradition or design culture of inspiring each other to get the most of us.
Yeah.
Part of the tradition or like tool of creating this design culture would be using a scientific method of validation. So once again, so we are not speaking with opinions, but we are speaking more about
results on facts. Yeah.
Exactly.
So we just need to know if we're going into the right direction, and if not, obviously we'd take a detour or maybe slow down or rethink stuff and then move forward. It seems to me, obviously, I don't know much about, how it looks like on a daily basis, but it seems to me it's such a complex position, game designer.
Indeed.
So it gives you those different areas of interests and possibilities to grow and expand your knowledge and develop skills, yeah?
Yes, I even call it like it gives me complex professional nourishment, because it's a combination of a huge area of creativity, which includes like this intuitive eureka moments to some form of structured and systematic approach to finding out new stuff. It gives me opportunity to work with people and establish a really like frictionless collaboration. And a lot of the times, like we designers deal with the trust, and like I will always say that trust is our biggest currency, especially like when we're speaking trust of players, but also trust of other teammates. So it includes a whole area of let's say interpersonal collaboration and communication and even relationship challenges. And also it has a huge area of problem solving, which
Well, there you go,
is At the end of the day, no matter what kind of dream project you are working on, it boils down to a series of problems which you need to solve. And then you need to have some form of satisfaction in solving, like, let's say, complex interpersonal, even like resource-based puzzles.
So all sorts of problems, and
Yes.
you just need to know how to overcome the problems and
Yes.
to move forward. What ambitions does design have in TSG? What is the main ambition?
That's a good question.
Is it?
I think all of your questions are great,
Thank you.
but it's really hard to answer because, as I told you, we finished a very intensive time of scaling. So currently, the first ambition is to create some form of baseline of standardized, like let's say, of standards across the company in game
So-
design.
Like showing that that's the line and we start from here. Okay.
I would not say exactly it's a starting line because a lot of the projects and the game designers are far past the starting line, but it's more about like everybody is aware that this is the baseline from which we build up. And the second step, it's not exactly second because these things kind of happen all at once because we have a lot of projects with a lot of different designers with a lot of different skills and seniorities. So let's say the second pillar is to nurture something which I call skill spikes in designers, which means that some form of start of becoming expert in specific fields, which are a nature of our designer. And then when you achieve the fabled, let's say, expert level of being a designer, then we focus on becoming cutting edge in some specific areas of expertise. So basically, TSG wants to lead, not the follow of the trends of the markets. We want to create trends of the markets, and this cannot be done without innovation and cutting edge knowledge.
Well, absolutely, yeah, by all means. We
And-
need to be bold.
This is the exciting part about my job is because I'm supporting and facilitating this process. So it's like I myself I'm not becoming
Well, I'm sorry, when do you sleep?
Well,
If any sleep?
I try.
There's so many things you've covered and so many things you're talking about that just opens my eyes so wide because, you see the job title game designer and you see, okay, that's a nice job, I can do it, I can design games, but what sort of skill set one needs to have to become a game designer?
As I told you, it's good to look on it from the optics of like creativity, problem solving, and communication. And basically, creativity speaks about some form of access to the well of ideas, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely intuition involved.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Although
Okay,
there are
yeah.
more intuitive designers and there are more like analytic designers.
Okay.
So
and there's room for all of them, yeah?
yeah, definitely,
Okay.
especially when we are speaking about mobile free-to-play. So creativity is a great start. Then problem solving and critical thinking and logical thinking is also a must-have. And also having, let's say, getting back to creativity, being able not get addicted to your own ideas, because like especially when we are speaking with problem solving, you often need to do a lot of difficult
Well, that
decisions.
sounds super difficult to me.
A lot of your, let's say, you need to not get hooked on your own ideas, because a lot of the times you need to just
Listen
get past them.
and listen to your colleagues tell you.
Yes,
and
yes.
that just opens.
It's great to have genius ideas, but if you don't have the time to do it, or you just did a half of it and you don't have the time to finish it, you need to be able to decide that it's being cut. So the ability to make pragmatic compromises is super important.
So great talker, great communicator, creative, open-minded, with this sort of a personality not being too much addictive.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
a lot of things that
I know. I am not. Nobody said it's going to be easy.
yeah, no one promised that.
Nobody promised that it's going to be easy. And there are even more like other requirements. The good news is you don't have to have all these attributes on the same high level, because there are a lot of positions, and even like speaking currently about TSG, we have really a lot of different projects which have different needs. Some of them need more analytic designers, which need, for example, the basic creative literacy, so to speak, and some of them really need, let's say, more intuitive designers, which have like basic analytic literacy.
So, like we've said, there's room for everyone. So, anyone who's up to the task is welcome.
I would say that the ability to communicate is the one which is critical, because even if you are an analytic designer or an intuitive designer, you still need to
communicate,
be able to get to an agreement and collaboration with the rest of the people.
Yeah, that's insightful. Do you want to say anything to our future colleagues? So people who will watch us and listen to us, hopefully, masses of people, and would get into it, would get interested in what you've said, because it's super interesting to me. So that they probably think the same. So what would you recommend for them as a starting point?
There's multiple things which I would like to say, but I will just say from my point of view the two most important ones, which showed to be the most important ones in my career. And it, as you said, it goes through ups and downs, through successes and failures. What's important is that every success or every failure should be some form of learning experience. And if you go through this experience, it can be really, really difficult. You should try to learn a lesson from it. Basically, what I'm trying to say, to try to constantly be growing and try to search for environment and people which nourish this growth. So, for example, like try to always be in some form of team when there's somebody who is more clever or more experienced than you, so you can
learn from the best.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing. And the second part, which might be even more important, from at least from my failures, so to speak, it's from my experience, we all, no matter what kind of position in game industry, we all are kind of doing our dream jobs. And but the nature of human beings is that we got used to everything and we got into these stereotypes, and it's completely fine, but we should never take any of what we have for granted.
That was so deep. Yeah, but people do that, don't they, nowadays?
Yes, because you get trapped in your stereotype, and you think it's just like I deserve it just because I am, but it's not.
That's not the way it works.
It's not the way it works, because when you get trapped in this kind of mindset, you stop caring for your work, and you stop caring for your own
and
role.
The quality goes down, and everything goes down.
And then suddenly you even get less engaged and you get less happy. So
you're just detached.
I would say, like, remember that you're doing your dream job and don't take
it for granted.
Exactly.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
I like that one. I'm gonna use it. Well, and the final one for you, Marek. Obviously, you've got 15 years of experience. Do you notice, or have you noticed, any significant change in the approach of game design throughout that time?
Another good question.
I've just came up with it. So
yeah, you're full of great questions.
Thank you.
You're a question genius. I was just thinking about it the other day, and it's very interesting to compare the evolution of the film industry and the evolution of the gaming industry. So what you can see that there's like when you look on the filming industry, there's a lot of like specialization popping up as the movies evolved in different genres. And you can see this trend even in game design. So when I started to work on as a game designer way back, we did everything ourselves. But then you started to see this kind of emerging specialties or specific expertise in game design. I remember when first time I heard about narrative design, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. Yeah. So, and then UX design became something which were done by specific, very skilled people. And I see also this trend with economy design, which is very, very fascinating for me, especially how as games become more and more complex, the math involved, it's like just mind-blowing. And I think this trend will continue. You have like specific combat designers. You have like a lot of other like experts in the field.
Right.
And I think as the gaming industry will evolve and the gaming products and projects will become more tailored for some
More specialized and specific.
Yes,
Yeah.
you will see like different specific areas of expertise.
Excellent. So, to me, to my mind, is like the quality of and the whole outcome of creating the game will be on much higher level because of the specialization of and dividing into those little ones who
Exactly.
work for the whole picture.
Exactly.
In the end.
Exactly. It also means that you as a game designer have the ability to choose what you want to be focusing on.
So it'll give the potential employees, a wider perspective and
Yes.
many
Yes.
more jobs and many
Yes.
more places and room for them.
Yes. If I can recommend, for example, currently the most lucrative area of game design is economy design, I would say.
Well, there you go. So that's the message we're sending across now. Okay, Marek, that was the whole set of my questions. Let's call them my questions. And
Yeah.
and thank you for giving such brilliant answers. I do appreciate that. And just for fun and to give you a little bit chill down the spine, there's something more, and it's called a Wheel of Fortune. I call it the Wheel of Fate.
Oh my God.
And you need to agree. You just need to say yes to that.
I'm saying yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we'll have a set of questions. I'll explain everything later when we approach the wheel. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, the fabled Wheel of Fate.
That's it. That's the one with the lovely envelopes on them.
Mm.
So in each of them, there's one question for you. You know the job, you know the drill. You
Yeah.
spin the wheel, you take out the question and read it out loud, and don't run away.
I will
promise
try.
that?
I cannot promise anything.
All right, ready to go?
Yep, let's do it.
Give it a go.
I don't want to break it. Oh, that was a lousy spin.
That was no, it was
Hey,
fine.
it's
That was a
okay.
spin off of fate.
Yes. You cannot go wrong with fate, right? For example, what kind of a child were you?
Oh, there you go. What kind of a child were you?
Very tall.
Very tall. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Do you know what kind of a child I was?
I think I was always very kind child.
You seem like a kind person.
And do you remember the movie Never Ending Story?
Obviously,
So
yeah. One of my
when I
favorites.
seen the movie for the first time, I promised myself that I will find the land of fantasy.
Oh.
And I was really, really super serious about the promise.
Oh my.
And then later, after like 10 years, I was like, oh my God, I found it in my work. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, see, you should write a book. Your answers, your stories are just phenomenal. Thanks for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Cheers. Thank you. Okay. How did you like that?
Oh, that was unexpected.
You survived.
Yeah, well, I tried to.
Right, you did well. Okay. Before I let you go, I've got one question that I always ask my guests at the very end. Don't worry, it's this time is neutral. Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Right. What do you think is the future of game dev in general?
Can I tell a small story for that?
Of course, yeah.
I had a wonderful encounter the other day in a tram. There was a really interesting elder person sitting near to me.
Was it here in Wrocław?
No, it was in Bratislava, and he was super, like, let's say, happy, and like this kind of elder man he was. And he was kind of strange. He had a computer and he had like a strange bag or something, and then he started to speak with me, and he was like a university professor, like a theoretical physicist or something. And it was we spent together like 10 minutes or something in the tram, and we covered like 15 topics. And one of them was like he asked what I'm doing. I was like, I tell him, he was like, oh, interesting. And then we got to a point like when we are heading, where we are heading as a let's say
As an
humankind.
All right, okay.
And he told me that, like soon a lot of the work which is currently done by people will be covered by AI and then robots and so on. And then like what will be the rest of people be doing? And I was like, playing games. And he looked at me, you're right. So what I'm trying to say is
it was quite
like,
logical to him.
yes, what I'm trying to say that I think fairly soon, like games, and you see this trend that games becoming a normal part of our everyday lives, especially with the emergence of mobile gaming. But I'm for sure there will be other technologies. Yes, so I think as we move forward, people will have more and more time to which needs to be spent in some areas, and some people are better in spending their time than others. So there, I think there will be a lot of requests for like gaming experiences.
High demand.
Yes, high demand. Yes, exactly. For gaming experiences. Not only in the meaning of like wasting time, but also gamification of education, gamification.
Well, absolutely, it can be educational.
Yes, I see, and I think from evolution point of view, games are the most efficient way how to learn. So I think as we move forward, we will more and more realize this fact and start to use games not only as just like a time killer, so to speak, but also in other applications.
Brilliant. Okay, and I love the story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Right,
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all.